This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms and Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And this week we're showing Jonathan more of the weapons from Hunt Showdown.
Ah.
This is the Pennyshot.
That is horrible.
We've got more episodes covering Hunt Showdown in the back catalogue, so make sure to check those out. And as always, let us know what other games or guns you'd like to see Jonathan break down in the comment section below. Right, over to Jonathan.
Oh, cool. I forgot you could do this. It's always nice when you can shoot the guns in your gun viewer. This is looking really good. This is a Bergmann 1896, which I couldn't resist picking up two of these. We see the loading system there. I can't say enough good things about this. Every pin is in place. These three pins through the frame there. Everything's present and correct. Even the checkering on the grips, I would say, is probably the right checkerings per inch, or whatever you want to call it. And the little logo there, in real life says Gaggenau VCS Sewell, and it's a little figure. This one has been picked out in white for photography. Wouldn't normally look like that. Two witness holes in the side of the magazine there. They're again, they're there. They're the right size, the right angle. The reload is correct. We have little checkered nubbins here that we can pull down on and then pull open to insert a clip and then let it go. And our bolt, as depicted, if we lock that open there, that's looking pretty good to me. Ejection from the top. Don't have any clips of rounds to show you, unfortunately, but just look at the game. They've pretty much got it. Firing pin in the middle of the bolt there. A really interesting early self-loading pistol, needless to say. Same year as the C96, of course, the broom handle. Similar kind of configuration, but a different take and a different sort of aesthetic, if you like. Just really nice to see. It's a difference between the three that we've got. I would need to go away and check the books to make sure that this is not correct after all. But there's a definite difference there where the barrel assembly meets the frame. Different angles and interface going on there. So I actually genuinely don't know if that's an error or a variant of the Bergmann that I'm not familiar with. That's the level of, that's how happy I am with this gun. I am a bit doubtful about that topping up reload there. I haven't tried it, but having done it with the Garand, these on-block clips that stay inside the firearm, topping them up like that, I would be skeptical that's possible with the Bergmann, but I can't be sure. Or if it is possible, I suspect it's a lot more of a faff than what's depicted there, with just sort of thumbing them all in like they're a conventional magazine. They're not. It's a clip of rounds, so and it's very deep in the gun as well. I like the way they're holding them. I won't do it with these because we don't want them clonking into each other, but holding the two together for the reload is good. I like the decoration as well. We don't have any decorated Bergmann 1896s, sadly. If we did, I'd quite like them to look like that. They're really good. Relatively subtle. Often engraving virtual firearms is pretty over the top and like sort of excessively deep. You can carve metal as deeply as they often appear, but you typically don't. It's more shallow, more like this. Actually, probably even finer than it's depicted here. I think the bolt might be a little sluggish there. Perhaps a little. Let's replicate that. Yeah. Unsurprisingly, I think the only way it's going to fly forward that slowly is if it's very full of old grease or something. We do, by the way, have the manual safety on the side here. I don't know if that comes into play in the game. I suspect not. Just pivots up to there, disables the trigger, and gives you a nice visual indicator that you are on safe and you have to flip that down out of the way. Really remarkably slick for 1896. What in the bejesus is that?
It's called a bomb lance.
Of course.
It's basically a harpoon that explodes.
Okay.
On the end of a big glaive, I guess.
Yeah, an actual glaive, not a blade glaive.
Is that like the third time in 2 episodes you brought a blade? You've been rewatching them?
In every opportunity, Dave. You should know this by now. Oh, I like the spanning device. That's very cool. They attach to the top and cock the crossbow-esque bit of this combination weapon, I guess it is. Yeah, so it's a sort of staff weapon. I think it probably is a glaive head. I'm not very good on that stuff. I have colleagues who know this stuff. And then a sort of weird spring-loaded thing that shoots crossbow bolts. The head of the bolt looks maybe a bit modern, and I'm not sure about the bletching or lack thereof. But this is all outside my area, so I'll shut up. You know, for a moment, I genuinely thought you meant that you throw this thing like a spear and the whole thing explodes. You've shown me enough wacky stuff in the last couple of years. I would have believed it. This makes more sense.
I believe in the lore of the game, it was like a fishery tool to like hunt whales, but now reconstituted to hunt the undead.
Okay, yeah. Even real world whale hunting kit isn't this grim. Grim by virtue of what it does rather than how it looks. This looks like someone made it in a shed. No sights that I can see either. Guess it's a rooty-tooty, point-and-shooty type situation. Fun fantasy weapon. Explosive bolts are always questionable, but somewhat practical. Ah, right. Colt lightning. Rare in popular culture generally. I think the much more famous and arguably more fun lever actions get all of the glory, pretty much. But slide action rifles were a fairly big thing at this period. I think they were particularly popular, or at least later on, in 2.2, in 22 caliber, small animals and things like that. Looking very good. We have a rack full of them next door, but I didn't pick one up. Mechanically, it's a fairly easy one to get right, admittedly, because you have the slide connected to the bolt, cocking the hammer, cycling the action, of course. I like the tube reloading very much. I don't think we have a tube loader, and I'm not sure that we have one adapted for tube loading. That's intrigued me. I should go away and learn about that. But I have confidence that is probably depicted correctly. Those of you with an Old West firearms interest, I'm sure, will correct me on that. Not that I don't have one, but we have a collection here that spans 700 years or something of... where are we now? 1364 is the first English reference to handheld firearms. We're not far off. Something triple-barreled. Looks like a drilling.
Yeah, it's a drilling but upside down.
Yeah, I thought that looked weird.
2 rifle, 1 shotgun instead of the inverse.
So this is, I guess, is technically still a drilling, as in dry in German. 3 barrels, but instead of the usual small caliber rifle barrel as a sort of auxiliary to 2 shotgun barrels in conventional arrangement, there's at least one that exists where you've got 2 larger caliber rifle barrels and 1 shotgun barrel below it. So a different sort of firepower package, if you like. Don't know if that's period to this setting, but they definitely existed later on. The fantasy aspect definitely comes in with the cut down configuration with an axe blade. But of all of the sort of lashed up fantasy weapons I've seen, this is pretty good. It would all come down to how secure the blade attachment at the front is. And I'm not sure whatever straps those are up to the job. Or are they just additional reinforcement? They've thought to include a sort of knuckle bow guard for the hand, because if you're using this very short gun as an edged weapon, your hands are quite vulnerable. And if you're able to wield it one-handed, which I haven't seen as yet, that would make some sense. Some sense, as opposed to nonsense. I remember the Krag being in this game. Again, looking pretty good. There are different variants of the Krag. Maybe the most famous is the American adopted version, but the Scandinavian countries were first, of course. By the way, the name in the game, Springfield, is on the face of it a bit weird, but in reality, this is the America. I think I'm right in saying that this is a faithful representation of the 1892 US Krag-Jørgensen. We've got a brief respite there with an ordinary looking one, and now we've got the engraved receiver, crazy bayonet arrangement at the front, and string wrapped around it. Although this is quite plausibly some repairs, I would say, more so than most games. This thing looks like it's been around for a while, which is interesting if you think about it, because the Krag is an 1890s design. How old can it be? It's obviously had a hard life. But we see the classic Krag reload there. Flip open the spring-loaded magazine, drop in your rounds. You don't have to press them in or worry about rim alignment or anything like that. And drop them in, slap it closed, and it orientates itself.
When the Krag comes up in a few games, it's always the muddiest games, and it has a reload method that would welcome mud quite easily. I think it was in Battlefield 5. Mud like accumulates on the weapon, and similarly this game you're in a swamp. For every game the Krag appears in, people are going to have to be real careful with opening that loading mechanism.
Yeah, this is a good point though. So we broadly speaking, I mean, if you've ever seen some of the YouTubers who slather guns in mud and see if they still work, the ones that always do well are the ones that are sealed up, that you can close an action cover on. There's no actual ingress point for the mud. Then when you start shooting them, if they're self-loading or even if they're manually operated, the mud can work its way into the action and they'll start to have a problem. The Krag would be actually pretty good because the bolt closed and the magazine closed. There's no way that mud's getting in there. As you say, you'd have to be very careful when it's open. That's the risk factor. If you have mud all over your hands, you're getting mud on the loose rounds, you're getting that into the action. That would be the problem. Luckily, players don't have to worry about that. Another American weapon. What a surprise. I'm always a bit slack with Marlins because they're in a different building. And I haven't usually got time to get them, and today is no exception. But this is, as ever with this game, a very good representation of an 1895 Marlin. That model still, of course, around today, albeit it doesn't look like this. I think you can pretty much always spot the Marlin with the big hump on the bottom of the action, certainly over the classic Winchesters, where the pivot point for the lever is. Certainly with this model, the great big block bolt that slides on the right-hand side of the receiver, rather than the Winchester toggle at the top or the Browning double-locked bolt. Some nice wear on this. Really looks like they've copied a genuine antique. Even down to the view of the back of the bolt there, where you've got pitting on the some of the high points of the metal where rust has formed and then been cleaned away. That's great attention to detail. I love the reflections on the receiver. The natural thing to compare this to is Red Dead Redemption, and those games are amazing, but the finish on the firearms is pretty lacking. Very flat and kind of bare metal looking. This is how to do a bare metal firearm. One in which the finish has worn off, basically through handling. It's the good old Martini. I can feel my upper lip stiffening. So I think this one actually does need a little bit of work. Overall, looks good, has a nice aged looking, slightly battered looking, not very well looked after woodwork, which is not nice, but feels accurate for the setting. And the wear on the metal, pretty good. So weirdly enough, the first thing that stuck out for me on this was the marking on the receiver. I guess because I've seen so many. What it should look more like is this. So we have the classic Royal Cipher, Enfield, the date of manufacture, and then the model. And then directly below that, IC1, meaning interchangeable carbine 1. As it was originally introduced, you could, in theory, build it as either a cavalry carbine or an artillery carbine, the main difference being the bayonet attachment or not, because cavalry typically didn't need a bayonet. So the marking on this, it's sort of historically relevant. BSA, Birmingham Small Arms Company. This needn't be a military carbine per se. This could be a commercial one that's been exported to the US. That's more likely than them getting a bona fide British military Martini carbine. So that's not necessarily a problem. As to the general configuration, always trying to work out which model, which variant are they replicating here. This one isn't quite either of the cavalry or the artillery. More than anything else, to me, it looks like it's actually a cut-down rifle. In fact, yes, I think it has to be in universe, because the rear sight is the rifle rear sight, I believe. Don't think it is, actually. I think it's kind of halfway house between let me show you. So this I think would be probably the closest. Otherwise, this muzzle configuration is, I think, what they're going for, unless they're going for a cut-down rifle, where you would just have to relocate the bayonet barrel band and then put your own sort of metal cap on the end. I'm not sure. It's looking pretty good except for the very front end. And it's definitely not this version, which has a very elaborate looking, quite aesthetically pleasing actually, curved or curvy end cap. So it's not this variant. It also has something that sticks in my mind because I remember nearly burning my finger on one once. There's a transverse pin on the rifle just in front of the receiver there, which you can see a version of here, and that gets very hot when the weapon gets hot. That's not on the carbines, or at least not the ones I'm looking at, and from memory, not on others either. So there's no pin there. That and the sight looking like it's rifle size, I'd say that's meant to be a rifle sight, has a much longer base and leaf than the little baby carbine sight. And then the weird front end. My money is on this being a Mark II, or maybe, yeah, a Mark II Martini-Henry rifle that's been cut down. Now the cocking indicator is not moving forward when fired, which it should. So when we cock this, that teardrop shape on the side cocks back because it's there in lieu of a hammer so that the user knows that the weapon is cocked. And then when you fire it off, which I won't do because it damages the spring, but we'll close the action with the trigger and the same result happens. That goes forward just like a hammer goes forward. So it should also do that on this. I like the reload though. The case goes flying out with the angle, all the motion looks correct for how you would really do that. Reasonably punchy sound to it. This is still a big 45 cartridge, although there was a carbine load for it that didn't punish your shoulder quite as much. Doesn't stop you firing the rifle load through it, of course. Oh, and the Harston quick loader kind of looks even more silly on a carbine. We have a video on the Royal Armouries channel showing this thing working. We managed to get it to cycle 3 rounds, not firing it, but to cycle 3 rounds through it once. So it functions exactly as you see here. Stores 5 rounds in a sort of, well, it's a magazine. Clips onto the side of the gun, and a little arm pops out and loads your chamber for you. That's how it loads as well. Although there's a glitch there. So they've quite correctly modeled pulling the follower tab down, locking that in place on the bottom of the magazine. But before they've put any rounds in, that's popped back up to the top again. That shouldn't happen. It should stay down the bottom until you've dropped in your 5 rounds with a little bit of faffing around. And you get your 5 rounds in. Then you remove the tab from the bottom, from its clipped point at the bottom of the mag, and then it gives you your spring pressure to feed the rounds. So a bit of an animation glitch there, which I'm sure they'll fix. I'm always impressed that these zombies keep their hats on. I can't keep my hat on when I wear a hat, so I don't know how they manage it. I think of all the places for the Harston quick loader to exist, Hunt Showdown is probably the best place for it. Not adopted, not even seriously considered really by the British Army. They did do some trials with it, but it was so expensive, complicated, liable to get out of order, as they would say, and adds a lot of weight to a reasonably hefty weapon, not excessively by the standards of the day at all, but there's enough metal there that yeah, you don't want to be adding more to the actual rifle or carbine in this case. The problem you have when you're developing new weapons technology in the late 19th century is by the time you've sketched what you want to create, there's a machine gun been invented. It always strikes me as a little odd in a sort of Old West setting when you see a double action revolver. Even though I know full well that they existed and they were used, it always feels a bit jarring. But of course, we are in the very late period here. So a Colt 1892 double action 38 revolver. It's the latest thing in revolvers. Why wouldn't you have it? It just doesn't kind of fit the old Schofield single action army, laborious reloading, theatrical use of the single action that we know and love from the movies. But needless to say, in reality, when reliable, or what was perceived to be reliable double action revolvers that were affordable came out in around this era, people bought them. If you want a gunfighter or a lawman or something, then you'd probably stick with your faithful old single action Colt or Smith & Wesson. Needless to say, in this scenario, a swing-out 6-shot cylinder is a real advantage. And we haven't, of course, done better than that, really, for revolvers.
After firing a lot of shots in sequence, your hearing starts to go. And I think the reload animation might make you wince.
Yeah. I mean, let's do pro and con there. So yes, the idea that two revolvers firing a couple of feet from your ears might give you a bit of a deafening temporarily is interesting. You are outdoors, but that effect is something that would definitely happen indoors. Banging your revolvers together to somehow encourage all of the empty cases to fall out. If you were pressed, I'm sure you would try it, but I don't think it would do much other than potentially damage your revolvers. What would be better, if I may make an observation to the developers here, somehow try and flick out both cylinders, which is doable, and then alternately bang the ejector rods. That would absolutely get the cartridge cases out. Smacking them together is not probably going to do anything because they are expanded, molecularly stuck to the steel of the cylinder, effectively, especially with black powder fouling. Don't bang your revolvers together, kids. Ooh, that might be the shortest Obrez that I've ever seen. Possibly a tunnel fighting weapon, but I think at this point we have more that have just been chopped up from old Mosins than ever existed in service. People love them though. They love the idea of all the power, well, not all the power, as much power as the pressure in that short barrel can develop from the 7.62 by 54 rimmed cartridge, which is not a slouch, hence it's still used today.
And this one doubles as a mace.
Yeah, I saw the animations are great, by the way, but the sort of fondling of the mace head there arguably makes more sense as a mace with a gun capability than it does just cut down as an X rifle. A quirk of the conversion here is that the front sight blade is really low, so I think you're going to be shooting high in reality, because to get that iron sight picture that we're seeing there, the muzzle would have to be brought up significantly. Probably the least of your concerns if you're trying to use this as a serious weapon. Oh, good grief. Now it has a drum magazine on it. Bring back the mace head, that's what I say. It's fairly cursed, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I put it in.
Of course. Yeah, well, I thought I'd take the opportunity to show the world the closest thing we have to a Mosin this short, which is this nonsense. With a permanently attached non-lethal bayonet, weird ports in the barrel, a very funny looking cut down stock, reinforcing straps on the wrist of the butt, and it still has a butt, so it's not an Obrez, and this is a Finnish training carbine, which is interesting, and I need to go away and learn about it. But that's by far the shortest Mosin we have. You know it's short because it fits on camera, except for the bayonet. Ah.
This is the Pennyshot.
That is horrible. Truly horrifying. Why are the barrels cut off? That would make it very difficult to open. Harder than it's depicted there. You need a bit of leverage, something to get hold of to open this type of derringer. I like the ammunition. I like the way there's a sort of central spigot that the coins are attached to. Although, thinking about it, if you shot that out of a firearm, it probably would stay together. Unless you have, there must be a sort of breakaway head on it, I guess. People have, believe it or not, shot coins out of guns, mostly in fiction.
Makes me laugh that the gun is so short in the game it doesn't have a melee animation. You just hit them with the left hook.
Yeah.
Everything else you're hitting them with the weapon, but it's not going to do anything with the Pennyshot.
It's not going to do much. I mean, it would work like a not very good knuckle duster if you just punched out with it. But again, why are the barrels cut off at all? And why are they cut off at an angle? So the top barrel is giving you a different performance than the lower barrel. Not that it matters if you're shooting coins, I guess. The historical example in my head for shooting coins out of firearms is actually, I think it's 1820s American folk tale about someone shooting a witch in the form of a hare, I think it was, where a silver coin cut into quarters was used to shoot a witch. I think it was in Hareform, but there are multiple folklore accounts of using coins in that sort of a way. But I can't remember any that are just ordinary pennies. Wow, a Vetterli Obrez makes me weep. It's like, oh, and it's got a Howl conversion. Because of course it does. Good lord. Most of me hates this. Part of me wants to see if someone could make it. For those of you who don't know, the Howl is a First World War vintage self-operating conversion for the Lee Enfield rifle with a great big gas piston, with a frame that has a cam track, and they cut the head of the bolt handle off on that as well. I think if you were doing this, you just leave the handle on so that you can use it in manually if the thing breaks, which is likely. Now, the Howl was designed to work with a much longer gas piston than this, or gas cylinder than this. So I'm not entirely convinced that this would work well, at least not without a fair bit of research and development. And it's just so short. And this, I don't know that hose clamps existed in the 1890s. Maybe they did. I don't know. Hell, if they didn't, this chap has invented them. Now, this is cycling slow enough that and this is probably true, to be fair, of a lot of the weapons in the game. I think they all need to be a bit more vigorous, but you could outrun your own trigger with this thing. But you know what? In the game, in the world of the game, I'm all for it. At the end of the day, it's still a Vetterli rifle in a video game, so I'm not going to give it too hard a time. Closest thing I could find to this would be this Vetterli 1878. I believe that's the 6971 drastically cut down, but this is the 78 carbine with that distinctive nose cap. And this would not look out of place in the game, as is, frankly. And you can see it has the same action, pretty much, slightly refined over the version you're seeing. Great big twin rear lug bolt there. Now that's interesting. Does that say beans on the side?
Yeah, it's a suppressor made out of bean. Well, it's not made out of beans, it's made out of a bean can.
I've never seen a can of beans that looks like that. Is this some historical bean container with which I am unfamiliar?
I'll consult our bean can expert.
Can we please have tin can expert reacts? Now, you can kind of, in theory, make a silencer or a suppressor out of anything, any sealed container. The problem with that is, well, it's what you put inside it. So ironically, if you left the beans in and stuck that on the end of the rifle, that's going to have more effect than this. Although we don't know what baffles or even wipes this thing might have, although I can't see a wipe in the front. So it's highly unlikely to be as quiet as it's depicted in the game. Let's put it that way. The can of beans thing reminds me, we read a comment the other day on the latest Helldivers video. This is as relevant as entomologist reacts to bugs in Helldivers 2. I would actually watch that. And somebody else pointed out that's already been done. So there is nothing that cannot be reacted to. So I demand to see can of beans. Thanks for watching, guys. More guns from the always fascinating Hunt Showdown there. Please do go and check out our Royal Armouries YouTube channel, our website, socials, all of that. And you might like to check out History of Weapons and War, which is an app or website where you'll see our Armouries content without ads and a load of other stuff from weapon-related YouTubers who are doing stuff over there as well. Whatever you end up checking out, please do come back and join us here on GameSpot next week.